In this lesson, we're going to be talking about services. Services are applications that run in the background, which means they're hidden from view, they don't typically have any sort of interface component at all, and you wouldn't normally interact with them directly except through the interface that they are exposing through the services port in the case of a network application. First, I want to show you services under Windows. So you can see there are a number of services here that are running, and you'll notice in this window there's a status column, which shows whether the service is started. Now, there are a number of services here, and they do a variety of things. So you'll see a background intelligent transfer service, for example, which would transfer files without you needing to be directly involved in it. You can see the BitLocker drive encryption service, and in another video we'll talk about drive encryption. That service handles the encryption and decryption of data that's stored on the hard drive. Sometimes you'll have a service that looks for hardware to be plugged in. For example, Apple has a helper service that notices when your iPod or iPhone or iPad has been plugged in, and it will launch an application like iTunes or do something else with the fact that the hardware has been plugged in. There are other types of services, and those network services, I can show you under Linux, will have listener ports. And I can show you the different things that are running as listeners here on this Linux machine. There's a database server, MySQL. There's also an SMB server. There's an asterisk server for voice over IP. There is an Apache server. You can see partway down there under local address, it's got an asterisk :HTTP. That means it's listening on the HTTP port or port 80. And at the far end, you can see that the program that's actually running, offering that service is Apache 2. These are all different services, and they have a network component, which means they are listening on a network port and waiting for connections from other machines so that they can offer up the service to remote users. So you have local services and you have remote services, and you might have a database server or a web server or a file server, even a server that's capable of sharing up your desktop. So for example, VNC would be a service that's capable of sharing your desktop from your local system out to remote systems, which would allow you to get into your desktop from a remote system. So these are all examples of different services. I've shown you where to look at services on the Windows side, and I've shown you some different services that are listening on this Linux system, /etc/init.d. These are all startup and shutdown scripts that are here, and these are all of the different services that are available on this particular Linux system. It doesn't mean all of these services are running, but these are all capable of running. I could restart the MySQL server that's running, and you'll see here that it's saying rather than using etc/init.d, you should use the service utility. So some Linux systems actually have a utility called service that will start up and shut down services. So I could do service MySQL stop as an example, and it would shut down the MySQL service. You would no longer be able to get access to the MySQL databases that are on this particular system. And you'll notice I am using sudo here. That's because these services generally require administrative privileges in order to start or stop them, because they are running as a different user than the one I am logged into, and so they require administrative privileges in order to kick them off. And that's one of the things about services. They are running as different users. So let's take a particular example here. The MySQL Server service is actually running as the MySQL user. Now, the thing that's significant about that is that If I could compromise this MySQL server service in some way, then I would be the MySQL user because that's the user that's actually running that particular program or that service. So on the Windows side, often you will see services that are running as local system. And you can see here on the right-hand side, most of the services here are logged on as local system. And the advantage to compromising a Windows service in this way is that local system has a lot of privileges. If you could compromise a Windows service that's running as local system, you would have a lot of privileges. And that's a little bit about services.